Hello, and good morning. Welcome back for another episode of the Sit Down Stand-Up Podcast. That almost sounded professional, and I am joined by my mighty mug of marketing, and together we are trying to tell stories, and by together, I mean, obviously it's an inanimate object. I'm not really relying on it to do much of the heavy lifting. It's really here just to provide me with some kind of water, just water. I'm in a mood this morning. I don't know. It's a weird thing. Anyway, but trying to tell stories that aren't unfunny. There we go. That's a lofty goal, and I don't know how well we're going to do, but we're trying to do it. And we're trying to reduce the ums. We're trying to reduce the amount of filler between sentences. You know, here's the thing. I don't like filler words. I don't like hearing myself say them. I don't like the ums and the uhs and the rights. The comma right, I've come to hate that almost more than anything else in the world. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, so I'm talking about something and I want you to agree with me. So I say something, right? And then I make another statement, right? And I just keep saying it. And every single time it's like, I'm trying to get you to affirm me, right? And it just gets on my nerves. But really what it is, I mean, there are some times where it is done as a way to engage the audience. It's there to get them to nod their heads and under track with what you're saying. You're trying to get them to calibrate. But a lot of people, I feel like, have just turned that into another instead of having a complete thought and just moving from one sentence to the next. You have that pause and then it doesn't sound weird if you do pause. You say, because it's like you're letting it sink in, right? You know, I'm letting it sink in. You're really trying to think about it. Anyway, I don't like, and the other thing I've come to loathe, and I wish, so here's the thing. So I loathe profanity. Now, there are times and places for profanity. I think it's a good thing to use, or it can be effective as a comedic tool. It can be very effective, especially if you don't use it very often. It is very effective as a, whoa, this guy is serious or very upset right now, because you know that this person never uses profanity. If you use it all the time, if your conversations are laced with it, really, what do you have to indicate displeasure? And in a lot of ways too, they're a great way of compacting, condensing, compressing meaning. You can know many things about what that person is trying to say by just saying one word. For example, there was a gal that I described as behaving, didn't call her, and I wasn't talking to her directly. I was describing this young lady to my mother, and I said, she's acting like, I wonder if I should say it here? Yeah, sure, why not? Because this isn't for kids anyway. I said she's behaving like a bitch. And Mom said, okay, now son, I understand you're upset, but I don't think we have to use that kind of wording. I think you can say that she's being unruly, she's being inconsiderate, she's being a bit reactionary, she's being incredibly hyper emotional, she's being disrespectful, but you don't. And I said, Mom, you just listed like 7 different words, and it took you 7 words to express what I expressed in one. Like when I said that, you knew what I was talking about, you knew what I was referring to, and you know that the summation of those things ends in the word bitch. So in that particular instance, and in instances like that, you can communicate how somebody's behaving, or just how much you have you don't have to say, I despise this crap. Because if you say I despise this, well, no. Okay, I don't know. And I don't want to get into a thing where I'm just saying a bunch of curse words here. So, but I think there is a place for them. There are times where they can be used to say in one word what would normally take like 10. I don't think they're good for labels. Like, I don't think calling somebody a curse word is good at any point, because it's never descriptive. Like the MFer, like that, unless you are actually describing somebody who has intercourse with their mother, that word has no inherent meaning other than I disrespect you greatly. I have no respect for you. I don't think highly of you, and perhaps I even have disdain for you, which is interesting because we don't seem to, society right now seems to be a little out of whack, out of calibration when it comes to what a right relationship is. Like, obviously I don't know the etymology of it, but yes, MFer on the face of it, for those of you who don't know, that's mother and then intercourser. Essentially, it's a much coarser term for intercourser. I don't know. It's been a long time since it ever meant that literally, but you can understand why initially anyway, that would be considered to be an insult. because like the way a child interacts with a parent, there's love there. There should be love there. And in our modern day, we go, well, if you love somebody, you have sex with them. That's just what you do. Which I think that's another one of our gaping intellectual chasms there, because it don't make no sense. Like procreation and physical intimacy are not equated to love in any way, shape, or form. It doesn't make any sense. Like there's a functional side to sex, and there is also the relational side, but neither one of them necessarily follow or would need to follow a declaration or understanding of mutual love with somebody. And love, there's many, many different kinds and on many different levels. But it seems like we understand, or we understood at some point, society understood, that saying there was an incestuous relationship between somebody and their mother was an insult. And why? Why? Look, if they're not trying to have kids necessarily, they found love, she's divorced and he's, of age, and, because their DNA overlaps and they get each other, they just want to have fun, they want to do the thing. Society in general, like, it should turn your stomach a little bit. It turns my stomach. It's very, right? It's very horrific. But yet in society today, we have many relationships that are wholly unnatural and very bizarre and don't make a lot of sense and are not healthy. And yet we champion those. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to get off too much on a tangent there. It just is peculiar, because I think the time is coming, or we're already there, where people just go, you know what? If it's not hurting anybody, there's nothing wrong with it. Say, really? I do think there's something wrong with a son having sex with his mother, or a daughter having sex with her father. Like, I think that's pretty disturbing. It kind of turns my stomach a little bit. But by today's standards, which is just, if you're not hurting anybody, if it's not illegal, then, and I don't even know if it's technically legal or not. And people will defend it. Well, the defense comes to, well, they're not trying to have kids. That's kind of where the incest has an issue. No. It's not even about the offspring. It's about a very warped relationship between a parent and a child. There's a love that is there for a parent and a child, and there's a love that's there for a man and a woman, a husband and wife. And those two are not the same thing. Like, it's still love, but it does not manifest the same way. It's creepy if you see a parent and a sibling behaving in a way that resembles what a husband and wife are like. Anyway, my point, circling back around, is that unless you're using that word specifically to refer to somebody who's doing that, which would be a derisive comment and bring a great deal of scorn, unless you're using it for that, it doesn't say anything. It doesn't describe anything. Now, hypocrite, liar, while those can be a little detrimental, because you're essentially declaring an identity over that person. Now, if they are a habitual liar, or if they habitually tell lies, then a liar might be actually an adequate term. And to be fair, if someone is in the process of lying and you call them out, calling them out as a liar, at least, again, it's not a useless label. It is not, I disrespect you. It's, I'm describing your behavior in this word. So it's a very easy way to, as I said before, kind of take a bunch of ideas and put them together, or to compress ideas, or just to say in one word, you're being untruthful, you're being dishonest, you're being deceitful, what have you, disingenuous. I do think it's still better to qualify it like that, to say you're being disingenuous, you're being deceitful, because those are two different things. And one of them is presenting something in a way that you really don't mean it, where you know that you're lying, but you're trying to present it as a legitimate argument or a legitimate comment. And the other one is, I'm just trying to deceive you. I'm trying to hoodwink you. I mean, they both kind of end up in the same way, but one of them is there is a distinction. There is a distinction. Disingenuous and deceitful. Maybe it's a distinction without a difference, in a manner of speaking, or difference without a distinction. I don't know. I can't remember how that phrase goes. But in any case, it gets down to the person's mentality and what they're trying to do. Because I would say deceit is more like evil. Disingenuous is more just trying to play dumb about it. Well, no. I mean, no. Of course, I would never do that. I mean, no, I wouldn't. Yeah, you would. You kind of know you would. But I'd have to look it up. But I just know that there are definitely times where disingenuous is the right word and deceitful is not the right word, and vice versa. So, anywho, but maybe it's one of those things where like all thumbs are fingers, but not all fingers are thumbs. You know what I'm saying? Like all things can be, all jacuzzis, nope, hot tubs. All hot tubs are jacuzzis, but not all jacuzzis are hot tubs. No, all jacuzzis are hot tubs, but not all hot tubs are jacuzzis. There you go. There, we got there. It was one of those things where there's a word that that counts or applies in one direction, but doesn't in the other. I don't think this is making sense. If it's not making sense, then watch it again and again and again and again. But let me get back to the reason why I went off on this tangent. That profanity has become used as a filler, and not. I was gonna say not in a good way, but it's not that I am offended at profanity. It's not that I find it vulgar and it's so disdainful. A lot of times it comes out when people are grasping for a right word to say. It's being said if they're trying to make something funny or punctuate it, but it has to be done sparingly. If you're going to use it as punctuation, it cannot be used all the time. So I was watching this one channel. I'm not going to call it out, but it's some folks playing video games, and they're really cool folks. They're really nice, and they seem really cool people. They've got a great friendship, which is always fun. Friendship? It's a friendship. For great friendship, which is always great to see and very encouraging to see. And I think it looks like they've been friends for, at least a decade or so. And so, if any of if you have a friend for more than, I would say even 5 years, 10 years, to me, 10 years probably bridges changes of location, because a lot can happen in 10 years. So if you can still have a friend that is a close friend past the 10-year mark, you're doing something good. Now that has to start after 18. Now, it doesn't mean it can't start before 18, but that 10-year qualifier needs to happen after high school, because, if you live next to each other in the same area, you're going to go to the same school and you're going to be in proximity to each other for those 10 years. But once you get on your own and you're moving and you're shaking and you're doing all that kind of stuff, that's when having somebody who's a friend after a full decade is a big deal. And it's a rule of thumb that I just made up just now. So it's an impromptu rule of thumb. Anywho. But the one downside is that when they get into these discussions, when somebody's trying to, sometimes when somebody's trying to make a point, otherwise it's just talking. There's just profanity all littered throughout. Like I would never do this because I don't have that much free time on my hands. But I almost wanted to there was like a 6-hour video. They did a stream where they were ranking these video games, and it was very entertaining for the most part. But out of that 6 hours, I would say there was about 15 minutes where I was not entertained. And those were the 15 minutes. I could almost guarantee you, out of those 6 hours, 15 minutes of that was just profanity. That was not advancing an idea. It wasn't punctuating an idea. It was just, instead of saying, oh my goodness gracious, or this is ridiculous, or, instead of, see, I'm doing it now. Instead of articulating exactly what they mean to say, or instead of just saying a sentence without a word in there. It's like there's a comma, profanity, comma again. So you're taking a pause out of your coherent thought to throw a word in there that I guess in the brain has been trained to think that means I'm saying something, people are going to listen to me, or that there's more emphasis, or that it's more important, or just it's the comma right. It's the I don't know what else to say, so I'm filling it in, and I don't want to say because sounds weak, so I'm going to say effing this, and sometimes it's even that, like they're grasping for words. It's effing stupid. I'm like, well, I'm glad you took 4 effings to get to the word stupid. It seems a little apropos, if you know what I mean. Because there's a quote about profanity that is, profanity is the evidence of a weak mind trying to express itself. And that's not always the case, because as I said, there are times, especially if you watch certain movies, TV shows even, there are times where profanity can, it can either punctuate a moment of intensity. It's never used, never when it's used as a calling somebody a name. That never lands for me anyway. But it's when when it's being used to emphasize a certain moment, or to make it comedical. I was watching Richard Pryor live on Bourbon Street, and he did this a few times where he said a phrase and it got like the scattered chuckle, and then he said it again a little more emphatically, and he put effing in there somewhere, and the crowd erupted. Now, I'm not saying that it is, I mean, because there's timing, there's how he said it. As I said, he changed the delivery a little bit for emphasis, but that word really went a long way, carried a lot of the load of that comedic, of the comedic chops. No, the comedic substance, I guess. So it can be used. There are certain situations, certain words when they are said, it just I don't know why, it just works. It's like magic. But those are few and far between, and I think you lose some of that emphasis if you use it all the time. Obviously, you definitely lose it if you're trying to emphasize a point. If you're really angry, but you use profanity all the time, you no longer really have anything to go to. All you can do is get louder or nastier. Whereas you can, if you're, I remember when I was growing up, because it was forbidden to say any kind of profanity when I was growing up, like in the house, outside of the house, anywhere. If some little kid tattletaled and said that I used profanity and it was true, I was in big trouble. I don't think that ever happened. It may have happened once. Not that I didn't get tattled on, but that they were actually accurately saying what I said, because I knew darn well that there was absolutely, like, I did not want to risk a spanking. Didn't want to risk a day of grounding, having the Nintendo taken away, whatever. I don't even remember. We went through a variety of disciplinary consequences for saying certain things, or saying or doing certain things. But I kept my nose clean for the most part. I really did, and you just obey. You know, when you have, especially looking back retroactively, because you don't really know in the moment. Usually parents are seen kind of as a bit of an obstacle when you're growing up. It's like all the things you want to do, they don't want you to do. But then there's plenty of times where they enable you to do amazing things because they got all the money. Like you don't do anything without their say so, because they usually have to pay for it, or whether it's their time or their effort or their money or all three, they pay for just about everything you're going to do. So it's usually not until like afterwards where you look back as an adult yourself and go, oh, okay, I see why they did that. Or yeah, I can really understand how much they were trying and all this kind of thing. And sometimes you look back, unfortunately, and there are people that look back and they go, my parents were horrible. They were horrible people, or horrible parents anyway. I don't know. Maybe, you know, I don't know what the work life was, but they weren't great. But I'm very fortunate to look back and go, my parents were great. I think they were fantastic. No parents are perfect. And we don't, it seems like society is keen on not helping parents. How is it we've had how many generations of people and the written language for however long, and yet we still don't have really definitive books on this stuff? I mean, we do have a little bit, especially medical stuff. Like if your baby is doing blah, 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 it probably means he or she has blah, 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 and therefore you do blah, blah, blah. Very helpful text right there. But a lot of the times people have these questions that no matter how many baby books they have, no matter how much of anything they have, they don't answer the question. I think obviously it's because the parents and the kids it's different, and you have different combinations, different natural inclinations to parenting styles, children with a natural disposition, the nature part before the nurture gets in there. So it does make it a little bit, I think it makes it much harder to nail something down, but it's like it's like almost everybody starts from square one when it comes to raising their kid. And that makes sense to a degree, as I said, just because you have a different combination of people. You would have to find a parenting couple who is very close to your parenting style or how you want to raise your kid or what you've gone through personally, what your baggage is, and also a child with the natural disposition that matches yours in order to really get the full effect. Because otherwise, everything from discipline to punishment to just modus operandi, how you actually functionally day to day raise the child, it's going to vary. And anyway, I don't know why I went in that direction. Oh, profanity, right? So I look back and say my parents were great, and I have no problems with my mom saying, like, making it a big deal that I cannot use profanity. But the great thing about it was, and this didn't even happen until I got older, but to like middle school. We're talking middle school at this point. So I'm not getting spanked. I'm not really getting grounded. If I use a swears, And my mom was loosening up a little bit too. And it was never that she was okay with it. She didn't want to hear it in the house. But in terms of just how severe the punishment was or how much it was despised, that started going away. And I was mostly hanging out with friends who weren't tattling on me anyway. So, because that's more like an elementary school type of thing. So anyway, middle school, but if I got, and it didn't happen very often, but if I got really ticked off, if somebody was doing something really, really messed up, the word would come out. A word would come out. And people would just stop. The people who knew me anyway, which, like I said, it's a group of friends. And then we're stopping because, oh, you don't want to make Jesse angry. He's terrifying when you don't want to see me mad. You know, that's an ego thing. But it was just, he never says that. He never says that word. Like that's a bad word for him. That's a bridge too far. You do not use profanity. Forget physical violence. You just don't use profanity. He just, what? Now, all of them did, but they knew that I didn't. So when I used it, if it came out, it was kind of a, okay, hold up here. What's going on? Kind of a thing. It didn't mean I was right. And it didn't mean that whatever I was upset about, everybody just was like, oh, okay, whatever you want. Like I said, it wasn't because I was terrifying or that my anger was terrifying. It was enough to catch their attention without me really having to articulate anything and go off into a tangent and say, this is why I'm upset. All I had to do was use the word, and it kind of communicated everything there. And then we could go from there. But the whole premise of what I was feeling and why, or the focus of my animus was already covered with that profanity because I didn't use it that often. So all of that to say, but I've gotten to the point now, and what I was stumbling around in the beginning was, it's frustrating because people, if you say, I'm not a big fan of profanity or frequent use of profanity, they're going to assume you're like a religious nut job or something, or you're hip, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes out to it that gets affiliated with somebody who doesn't use profanity or doesn't want to hear it. And I was like, no, it's functional. Like if you have a 6-hour stream and 15 minutes, I understand I've set up a false premise there, because we haven't clearly definitively proven that it was in fact 15 minutes out of those 6 hours, but it just felt like a lot. And it was like, it could have been so much better if we just didn't have this laced with profanity, because you could have said the word banana and I would say the same thing. That's where the different distinction is. It's not that it's a profane word. It's a word that you've chosen to use over and over and over again in the middle of a sentence, that you even pause in the sentence. If I were to write out the sentence, it would be your train of thought, comma, banana, comma, the rest of your train of thought. Why? So it's more of a function thing than it is a principle or, my sensibility. It really is just, you communicate better, more effectively, more concisely without lacing your stuff with profanity, because you don't do it with any other word other than like, I mean, I know I do it sometimes, but usually that's if I want to say like, and then the word, and then the rest of my sentence, because I'm making it akin to what I'm saying. But if you say it multiple times, it's you're kind of clamoring for the thought. Or the word, the next word that you want. So like, I don't like ums either. There was somebody who did they I can't remember who it was, but if somebody was making a statement, they were in an interview and they were saying something, and there was a lot of truth there. It was a great interview. It was, what they were saying was overall really good. What they were describing, the information they were giving, it was all great. But they sounded kind of like an idiot because they just said so many times, clearly not used to speaking. And it wasn't even public, it was just an interview, but speaking in a way where they're trying to communicate something specific in a non-casual format. I don't know how else to describe it. The brain does different things. And I've been trying, and I guarantee if I look back over even this podcast, see what I'm talking about? Look back over this podcast, I'm going to find a ton of ums and stutters and stammers. So it's not a condemnation of it, but those are coming out unbidden. And I'm just having to remind myself, don't say those words. Just, if anything else, give it a pause. That's better than saying just sounds stupid. But profanity, especially once you realize that they're not advancing a thought with it. It's literally just word trash. It's literally word litter. There we go. Literally litter. Well, does that work? Because it's metaphorical. Yeah, it's not literally. But it is the equivalent of word trash. It doesn't do anything. It just doesn't communicate anything, and there's just a reliance on it. And so something that otherwise, and like I said, I don't think any worse of those fellas for their frequent use of profanity. But I noticed that in like videos, like instead of it being like a live stream, in actual videos, especially earlier on on the channel, they weren't used very much. It was almost like they were trying to keep it like kid friendly kind of a thing. I don't know if that was the intention or if they just stuff happens. I know I've verified on my like the video game channel that I have, you will hear profanity. Not a ton, but if I get really perturbed, like then that's the thing. You know that I am not pleased because there is profanity. And at that point, I am using it expressly to express my displeasure with it. I'm not just saying effing this or banana. I just say banana this or banana that, or it's going through and then I die and banana, just things like that. Expletives that come out of a deep rooted pain and anguish of spirit. So, yeah. So I do use them on occasion. If I'm making a video, I don't, because the emotion isn't live. Like I'm not going to, there's nothing behind the word. If I'm doing it, if I'm making a video, there's no need for me to put it in there because I don't need to express that concisely and satisfactorily. The emotion just isn't there. Now, sometimes making video game, like if I'm playing a video game and it happens, I'm gonna have to but then again, it's a little bit of a different scenario. So all that to say, I understand there's a difference between live like streams and just making a video about something. And at least if there's a distinction, if you can tell, okay, just by the amount of vulgarity or profanity or bananas, I say bananas because it really isn't about the profaneness. That's not what gets me. It's the frequency of it. As I said, if somebody said banana instead of profanity, it would still be, or the bleeps. The bleep is fine, but you know how many times, especially, I mean, what is it? The rap music, as they say these days. I don't listen to it. I haven't messed with it in a long time. I used to listen to DC Talk, which actually stood for Decent Christian Talk. That was what the DC of it meant. And living up to his word. I mean, it was a Christian band, but so even when they were talking about segregation or racism or any number of other topics, just talking about God or their relationship with God, it was always clean. And I appreciated that. I don't necessarily love all the songs, but I could appreciate the fact that they were able to express themselves without using profanity. But there are genres, and it's not just rap, but a lot of other genres where if you had to bleep out, and mind you, you're not there, there's almost nothing being communicated by these words. They're just there. And I mean, it's a lot of calling people a name. So I guess if you have to label people or let people know that you don't respect them, then you would need to litter your words with it. But it's like, if you bleep out the profanity and you almost have no coherent sentence, what are you doing? You know, how is this communication? How is this art in any way, shape, or form? How is this just communication? How is it effective communication when it's all words that don't really have any meaning other than just, I disrespect you? Like that is the central idea when you're using that as a label or as a label to call somebody that name, or calling your critics names, or calling this other person names, or this person you have beef with, calling them a name. All that says is I disrespect you. So all you're saying that is over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, why? And then you put a beat to it. I'm not saying that's all rap music or that's all that it is. Like I said, there's other music that use it, but I typically avoid that music too, because I just don't. If it's in there once or somewhere in there, okay, but I can't even think of a song that I like where there's profanity in the lyrics, because it's not lyrical. To me, that is the antithesis of a lyric. A lyric is meant to be able to convey something like poetry. Poetry is, a lot of times, it doesn't always have to be, because there's some poetry that's storytelling and so forth, but a lot of poetry is condensing complicated ideas or emotions and distilling it down into a streamlined form of communication that it hits your understanding better than it hits your logic. It's not that you're able to understand what is being said, but not because of the volume of words it's not being articulated perfectly. It's actually the lack of articulation to a degree that gets it there. Anyway, I don't know. I'm floundering. We're at the end of my time is up. I got to go. But anyway, thanks for listening. I know this was a little bit less of a story. I was trying to get around to the story, but I got sidetracked by a bunch of different stuff. So anyway, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And I will talk to you soon.